All city council members are present this evening, as are members of the staff. We also have members of the public with us and also members of our police department. We're always happy to have them here with us. Ask Mike Eggett, our Community Development Director, if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
At this point in our meeting, we would like to take a moment of silence this evening, and as we take a moment of silence, we would like to remember those that are serving in behalf of this great nation that we live in, and we also would ask that you remember our first responders, our police and fire, and keep them in your thoughts, prayers. We also ask that you remember the city council meeting this evening, as they make decisions tonight that are in the interest of the community, that they might make good decisions that are best for those that we serve. We'll now take a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Next, move on to our public comment period. This is a period of time when it's allocated for members of the public or anyone to come forward and express any concerns or ideas that you might have to the city council. If you come forward to the mic, we would ask that you state your name, and if you would limit your comments to about 3 minutes. So time is yours for public comment. Seeing none, we'll move on next. Presentations and reports. First is the mayor's report. I only have a couple items. First, just an information thing to the council. Last night, the Central Weber Sewer District voted to raise the sewer rates for those that they serve by 2% for the upcoming year. That starts January 1st. So you might be aware of that. The city will be getting a notification from the sewer district. And the way that they figure that, they showed all the cities what the increase was, and they actually showed us with a negative increase. So we may come out okay on this one, it looked like. So next, we just had our elections and recently, and we have one member that of our council, Councilor Cody Hansen, that chose not to, run for re-election. I know he's had a lot more responsibilities with his job and doing things there that he wants to devote his time and attention to. But Cody served faithfully, and we appreciate his service. He also served on the city council. Did you serve about a full term, didn't you?
On the planning commission?
Planning commission.
A couple years.
Yeah, 2 years on the planning commission. And I was impressed with Cody when he was asked to serve on the planning commission. I had learned that he'd gone back through, I think, about 2 years worth of agendas.
Yeah.
Read them all, what had happened in previous planning commissions meetings, and I thought that was pretty noteworthy. I know Cody is serving on the city council. He is always researched things and came prepared, and always had concerns with, how we were doing, what we were doing, and particularly things with RDA and different things. But he served well, and we've just got a little token here, Cody, for your service, and I'll bring that down to you. I should have had you go down front, but I thought we could do it right here.
No, we're good. Thank you.
I know you like lots of things. Move on next to our city administration report. Turn the time to Mr. Worthen, our city administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, before you is the November report from the city administration. You'll note in there that we've provided all the documents that we normally do. I would like to make note of a couple things on my section as well as on Stacy Como. Just the work that Stacy does for our staff, especially at this time of year. We have a lot of changes that occur with our employees as they near the tax season coming up. Appreciate her work and all that she does. She brought to our attention the possibility of perhaps pursuing and investigating the benefits of maybe a self-serving fuel tank that could be used in our community. And kind of what prompted this was the state of Utah is going away from using Fuelman cards. They're going to a different provider for that service. And that opened up a whole series of questions on how that transition will take place. And in the conversation, the gentleman that's in charge of this program at the state of Utah inquired if whether we would consider perhaps putting in a fuel site that not only our employees could use, but would be open for the entire state, if you will, subdivisions of the state. That would be the Highway Patrol or other communities that are near us that could fuel from that tank as well. A huge discount, obviously, in fuel costs for us if we do that. It would take approximately between 5 to 7 years to pay for the actual tank and its installation. That's kind of our rough calculation, but I just wanted to point that out. It's something that was brought to our attention by, ironically, our HR director, but I just wanted to note her willingness to bring items forward that perhaps could help us in the long term. So we're investigating that. It might be on a future agenda for further discussion with you guys, or as we perhaps move into the budgetary review of capital projects, we might discuss it there in our strategic planning as well. But I thought it was quite interesting, and then the cost savings for that would be significant for the city, as well as we could provide fuel for other agencies that would, the Sheriff's Department, Utah Highway Patrol, get off the freeway, come in here, fuel up at a huge discounted rate from fuel. So something we're looking into. I just thought I'd point that out and commend Stacy for her work this past month, as well as we move forward into the new year. I'm going to come back to our anniversaries, our employee recognition. Our authorization plan, we don't have that in there. I believe we're still 1.75 below our authorized FTE. I apologize for missing that in our agenda or report. The community development report is before you as well. There's some new businesses coming in there. As you know, the car wash is going up like crazy now. They're getting some concrete done. And then the Brookhaven Office Park up on top on 1500 West is getting closed in. Pretty much it is closed in, and they're working on interior items in that building. It's a pretty good sized building. We're excited to have it in our community. This report's going to get fairly busy here within the next 3 months, so be mindful of that. Our finance report is there. We noted the sales tax report that we included in the packet. Sales tax continues to be fairly steady and increasing, which is good. Our anniversaries that I want to note here. First, we have one 5-year anniversary. Actually has 15 years, but we recognize them at 5-year increments. And that's Officer Joy Clark. He's with us today. Joy, congratulations. We're going to bring you up here in a minute, if that's all right. We'll bring the chief with you, too. But I would like to note our employee recognitions for December of 19. And Chris Stone in our Business Administration Department has 27 years of service with us. And Chris does a lot of things, whether it's for the RDA or the Senior Center or here in the City Hall building. with our social media programs. Chris is doing that. He also works with our newsletter every month, our employee newsletter. He's just the jack of all trades, and I appreciate Chris. He's not with us this night, but he has 27 years. Of course, we have Joey here tonight with 15 years of service. Was that all here, Joey? All in Riverdale?
15 was here, yeah.
Okay. You got time elsewhere?
Yeah, almost 18 years.
Combined? Matthew Hennessy, Captain Hennessy, has 14 years, so we'll see him next year in the fire department. Jared Hawks in our fire department has 11, and then Brent Bronson in our fire department has 7 years of service. I'd like to congratulate those employees on their annual anniversaries of working here at Riverdale City. We also held our Christmas party. Most of you were there on the 11th. That was fun. Had a good time doing that. I don't know if I reported on our cornhole activity. That was a blast. We do that every year around kind of Halloween time frame. We have a cornhole tossing contest with the different members of our staff and have some chili and soup. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of just an event to get together and talk. And I think the police are winning that cornhole event. But this year they didn't, though, did they?
This year's, but
Yeah.
usually Luigi,
Yes, they did.
he's like an expert.
See, they're looking forward to it again next year already, I tell you. But there's some employees that are really good with cornhole tossing. I was quite surprised, but we did that at the beginning of November. It was quite fun. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any questions for Mr. Worthen on the report?
No, just had the senior Christmas dinner as well.
Oh yes, that was on the
Friday night,
That was really good.
Okay, let's go down. Joy, you want to come up?
15 years.
Chief Franklin. It's pretty good when a third of the department comes with you. That's pretty neat. So, Chief, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. I can't believe it's been 15 years. I still remember when we hired Joey and how fast the time goes. And he is a huge asset to our department. One of the best things about him is he's from Texas. You can't beat having a guy from Texas. He's that big, bad, tough Texas guy. And he can really smoke a pork roast too. That's pretty darn good. But he's currently works in our patrol division. He's been patrol officer, traffic, motor officer. He's been a detective, been a field training officer. About everything you can do as an officer, he's accomplished that, and he's a guy that we can count on as a veteran. Our younger officers count on him when they're in difficult situations and circumstances, and he's a wealth of advice, and we can go to him when we need that extra detective as a patrol officer. He can run right out and write the search warrant or whatever we need done to help our detectives out on the bigger cases. So he does an awesome job. I love having him here. He's a great friend, and really appreciate everything he's done.
I just want to say thanks for the department for coming here and supporting Joy, and all that you do, Joy, is immensely appreciated here at Riverdale City. He walks in and he's an imposing character. People don't mess with Joy Clark. So, Mr. Dependable, sometimes Joy gets some of the maybe more difficult tasks assigned to him, but appreciate all that you do and being a member of Riverdale City staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's an honor for me to present this to you tonight. 15 years. You got 18 total, right? Where did you serve before?
I did a couple years with Davis County, and I did 1 year with Weaver County.
Did you? Super. We sincerely appreciate your service. Chief said he was from Texas. I kind of think of him as kind of walk softly, carry a big stick. Because to me, he seems like, I'm sure when you're with him, I'm sure he's fun to be around, but he's always seemed to me like a kind of a quiet kind of guy, just does the job, and I never hear anything derogatory. Of course, we really don't about any of you, and that's kind of scares us a little bit, but we appreciate what you do. I was out one morning, I think most of you know I live over by 4400 South, and he was the K-9 officer at that time, this morning anyway, this is a few years back, and he had his truck, his K-9 truck, and 7:30 in the morning, and I had to go a couple of places, and I went back and forth, and he stopped 3 traffic stops in just a very short time, and I thought, wowzers, this guy is really, I mean, he's out there by himself. He could have parked there and just sat there and not been busy, but he was out doing his job, and I was really impressed with that. I've always remembered that, and I just know what kind of guy he is. I've heard always good things about you. We sincerely appreciate your service here in Riverdale City. I'll present you with this certificate for 15 years of service, and there's also years of service. There comes a little cash you can buy you something with. So, congratulations to you.
All right, thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you. Hey, you wanted to say something? I can tell. You sure acted like it. I want to thank Cody for coming dressed tonight to receive that award too.
See you.
Okay, move on next to our consent items. Our first consent item is consideration to approve the meeting minutes from December 3rd, or the City Council work session, and also the City Council regular session. We have a second consent item. This is consideration to set a public hearing on January 7th, 2020, to receive and consider public comments regarding transferring city property to the Redevelopment Agency of Riverdale for future project area enhancements and development activities. Do you have any questions on the consent items? We have a motion then on the consent items. Councilor Mitchell.
Motion to approve consent items number 1 and number 2.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent items are approved unanimously. For the record, consent item number 3 has been scratched from this evening's agenda. That was already done in a previous meeting, so we won't need to do that this evening. So, moving on to the action items, we have one action item this evening, and this is consideration of awarding the ambulance RFP. Chief Shawley.
Thanks, Mayor. We originally sent out an RFP for a Type 1 F550 or 450 chassis ambulance, and rumors were coming back it was going to come in about $230,000 plus, and that's with no gurney, no nothing. That's taking all the stuff out of our old ambulance and putting in the new one. So talked with Chief West up in South Ogden. We kind of brainstormed this a little bit, went to Gold Cross, looked at Layton City, what they're running as a transfer, and decided to go a different route. We were proposing that we go to a Type 2 ambulance, which they call the transit ambulance. You've seen them, European ambulance. They run Mercedes. We're looking at a Ford. The cost of that has come back about $119,000. And so with that, we're going to put in technology that we wouldn't have been able to before, and monitors and a couple things to make automatic CPR device to keep the guys in their seats, and also some safety harnesses. So we're gonna be able to really upgrade this thing and stay under budget substantially. So with that, we'd propose that we do award professional sales and services. They were not the low bid. They were about 10,000 higher than the other bid. However, the other bid came back from Apparatus Equipment Services. And as I show you these two bids right off the bat, you might want to just notice the difference between quality just in the bid, one we're accepting, one we're denying. Also, right off the bat, this is a 2018 spec, not a 19 spec by their cover, and they didn't meet the spec. They took exception to stuff that said they weren't taking exception to, but they still did. They also have some hidden costs in there that we found that I believe puts them closer to the other bid anyways. So with that, I think we're making a good decision going with these. They have pretty good history. AEV is the top ambulance production agency for Type 2s across the country. They provide EMR. EMR is a national ambulance. EMR is all starting to move towards Type 2s as well. It's kind of a trend. Can't keep up with the cost of these big boxes. They just go up substantially every single year. So, willing to field any questions. Kind of a cool thing we're going to add to it is what they call lift, and we're going to put an automatic loading system in it. So our heavier patients, we can have an automatic gurney. It hooks onto the lift system within the gurney, then the load system loads the patient, and the guys don't have to lift at all. So
Okay.
you just pass them around.
Any questions? Counselor Stevens, did you have one?
Did you solicit? Did you solicit to the manufacturer, or is there a clearinghouse, so to speak?
We solicited to the 3 local manufacturers.
Local.
So local, those 2 are local in Salt Lake, and then also Murdoch in Salt Lake City has ambulance production capability. They can build ambulances through their program, but they didn't propose a bid for us.
Okay, so the state doesn't, you know how in
state-
some things we get a fleet type of and the kind, so that little smaller municipalities and entities can get a fleet type of savings.
Mm-hmm.
Is that available, or is it up to each individual to?
Well, we looked at getting state bid on the chassis itself, and then what we found out was we was going to have to drop ship it anyways. So by the time we drop shipped it, was cheaper to go out to RFP and have the ambulance agencies just have the unit close to them and drop ship it that way. It actually we lost all the savings we would have had by going state bid with the chassis here. So that's why we chose to go RFP with the ambulance production agencies, the manufacturer. So there is some other ways of bidding that's not an RFP bid, but we chose not to go that way because this way we can kind of get down to the specifics of what we're looking for. For example, we would like to match our fleet with the dark red and black to kind of keep this same concept going. South Ogden's also going that way now. So we're going to keep this fleet going. The one bid that didn't meet our specifications actually gave us Ford Red and quote to save us money. That's not what we were looking for. So for a standard spec, we wouldn't have got that.
You have a question?
What was the budgeted amount for this item? Do we know?
We were about 240,000 total is what I had to work with.
Okay. And this is just the ambulance is coming in at like 119, 120,
119.
110. Okay.
Yeah, and then if we look at providing a monitor that's mounted inside a CPR device,
So are you putting 120 grand worth of stuff in it?
no. Maybe 60.
How many departments are using this? You mentioned there were other departments that are.
We will be trend setting.
You'll be the trend setting. Okay.
We will be trend setting. Currently, Go Cross Ambulance, Layton City Ambulance, Summit County are using them. Summit County is the only one using them on 911s. Layton City is slowly transitioning some of their 911s into them. Go Cross is using them as their transport units, advanced transport units. Europe's been using them for years and years. I started in type 2. It's a lot different than when I started in type 2. The height is a 74-inch cab, so when you walk, you can basically walk into it. It's definitely a learning curve. We're going to have a learning curve with it. I have very good support from the department, though. We went through and let the guys look at them, analyze them, make sure we were making the right decision, and had some backing before we decided to go this way. It is a change for sure.
And South Ogden's excited about it also, right? Since we share ambulances with them.
Yeah, we're going with that. Since we're going with the Ford EcoBoost, it actually will have a little bit more power. We're going with an all-wheel drive unit. Most of our ambulances are rear-wheel drive, so we'll get an all-wheel drive unit out of it. The ride is better. We don't have to worry about putting either a liquid or air suspension in it, which is costly. We put $12,000 last year in just our chassis in repairs. So this is tried and true. If you see them, they're everywhere on the road in a lot of different capacities. Also, resale value on them has a higher resale. Our current ambulance that we're going to that we have surplused, we'll be lucky to get $2,000 out of it. We may have to pay somebody to take it.
That's just the chassis to keep the box, or
That's just. Are you talking the new one?
the one you're selling?
They want box and everything, and that's $2,000. That's matter of fact, if we would have put it in as part of our bid that they did as a trade-in, it would have cost us $8,800 for them to take it. That kind of shows you the decline.
In it or something?
What's that?
Is there a biohazard in it or something?
No, they just have no value to them. There's no market for them other than using them for ambulances. There's a couple businesses that will try to use them, and so when we looked at this transit, there's everybody uses it. If you look at all the delivery companies, ambulance agencies, what I'm hearing is ambulance agencies that are rural are still paying $20,000 to $40,000 for these used if we're under a lot more resale value for us.
Mr. Mitchell.
What are some of the advantages of the Type 1? I mean, like, why would anybody use the Type 1 anymore?
Honestly, it's a more masculine ambulance. You're arriving in a 450, 550 chassis. It's a bigger box. There's more room. There is a place for the big chassis when you're talking about larger patients or inner facilities where you have pumps and stuff that we don't run into. I was concerned. One of the things is comfort. Layton City runs them on 45-minute transports. We used to get complaints all the time from our patients that how bumpy the ride was. They got sick. They've been running them for about a year now, and they have zero complaints from patients for 45-minute transports. So the big box, the benefit is we can put all the firefighting stuff on it. We can do all that. Well, the new push is clean cab concepts in ambulances, so we don't contaminate clean cabs of patients with all of our cancer gear. And with this, we cannot put fire gear on this ambulance. This is a true clean cab. So that forces that gear away from that unit. The other big boxes, a lot of wasted space. This really does put everything in arm's reach. We put retractable seat belts in it. So if they get in a vehicle accident, it will retract them back to the seat. Everything they can reach everything from a seated position belted in, where the big boxes they cannot. But it is a little more closer quarters. So,
Mr. Stevens.
Okay, on the Type 1, they had dually wheels. And so when you, I mean, at a speed, now, with the Type 2, it gives the appearance that it has a higher center of gravity. Whether it does or not, I don't know.
right,
And they're not dual rear wheels.
right.
And where you differentiate, I'm glad you differentiated between like Gold Cross, which does the majority of transport for vice emergency, where ours is pretty much exclusively emergency, correct?
Correct.
And so is that an issue at all, the higher center of gravity?
I've talked to Layton City. I've talked to everybody that runs them. Summit County's put 184,000 miles on theirs. They run at 911s everywhere, and they put a lot more miles than we ever will. They said driving it is just a different driving, that we're going to have to just learn how to drive it. But as for a tip problem, they haven't had any issues with a tip problem. Really no different than the big boxes. Matter of fact, the big boxes, if we lose the air ride, are far more unstable than I believe this unit is. The air rides are pretty, or sway bars. They have anti-sway bars even on these things because how heavy they are off these chassis. The other thing about the big boxes, generally they're already overweighted where this box is very underweighted, and so it has a better ride to it, and we have a little bit more capability, and it doesn't allow us to overstock it or overbuild this thing sometimes like we do. We have a tendency of putting stuff in every crevice we can find. This prevents a little bit of that, but I'm actually kind of excited for it. We have 5 10-minute transport times. That's really all the patient will be in the back. Most of the stuff that's a critical care stuff we're doing either in the house or on the scene prior to loading them. And if we're looking at CPR devices, which right now all of Weber County all the Weber County paramedics have mechanical CPR devices, which takes a person away from doing chest compressions in the back of an ambulance. That frees a whole seat up. And we can also look at purchasing one of those with the monitor to match it up and give us that technology. So that's some of the things that opens that avenue for us to do some of those things that we wouldn't have been able to do before.
Any other questions?
I'm not putting European siren on it, Cody.
I love it. I think it's a good choice. Well done.
Honestly, I could not pay $250,000 for an ambulance that I'll walk up here in 7 years and ask you to do it again. Where this one, we can keep a newer fleet at less cost. And I think this is a better way to go.
Okay. So that brings up another question then I didn't know what the life cycle was of type 1, type 2. I guess they're comparable.
Yeah, they're comparable. Yeah, they're comparable. Generally, you look at replacing an ambulance or taking it out of frontline status within a 5 to 7 year period. So if you look at a big box in a 7-year time period, we're going to spend over $500,000. Next year, they're planning on, we're going to be closer to about 275. In 7 years, you're going to be over 300,000 for a big box. So when you start looking at that, we'll spend $500,000 in ambulances in 7 years. And I think this way we're already less than half the way we're going now. So I think we would be able to maintain that 5 to 7 year mark and be a lot more cost effective. And honestly, I think we're doing better patient care because we're not reaching over and moving around the box to try to grab everything. If you want to sit in one of our large ambulance boxes, you cannot reach anything. You have to get out of your seat, walk around the ambulance to go find stuff. And I think we'll be a lot more efficient with this. We have to be. So.
Is that Ford EcoBoost? Is that gas? Or is it?
It is. It's gas. It's about 15.5 miles a gallon compared to our 6 or 7 we're getting right now. And general maintenance is going to be substantially lower. But it's not cheap. I don't want to come across that this is a cheap ambulance. That's not what we're doing it for. It's still a very nice rig. Looking at Laytons and Go Crosses, it's still a nice rig. It just has some limitations, and so does the big box. It just depends on what you're going to run.
You know, it from having kids who are EMS, and there's kind of been this trend over the last 10, 15 years, maybe longer, of to try to doing more in the ambulance, and to the point where you can overwhelm the staff or the EMS technician in the back, and it sounds like maybe the trend is moving away from that with this type of an ambulance.
Actually, the trend with especially our cardiac arrest patients is actually stay on scene longer and stabilize inside the home. And if we can't stabilize and we can't take care of the patient inside the home and initiate some sort of change, our protocols now are leaning more towards calling the patient on scene, not transporting, and going that route more so than transportation. So we're transporting fewer and fewer of some of those patients that required a lot more manpower in the back of a rig to do that. So we're leaning now more towards, if we can't stabilize them, calling them and working through the facilities and medical controls, because we're doing everything inside the house the first 20 minutes an ER will. And the doctors, if you're not getting them back, how are we going to? So I think with that, most of the stuff, if we do get a critical patient, most of it's being done, throw them back to the ambulance. We can still put 3 technicians in the back of this ambulance and be able to work.
Mr. Mitchell.
Motion to approve the ambulance RFP to, is it EAV or who was it?
Yes.
Professional sales,
Okay, professional sales, all right.
Second,
Dollar amount.
although, do we need to do dollar amounts?
Yeah,
With, because if we're doing just the ambulance itself, and there's all this add-ons, that, how should the motion go with money expenditure?
What's your guess? How much?
I would say we've got about 24,000 in load, and we could be another 50, 60,000 in equipment. Normally, when we bid out an ambulance or request the funding, the money is in the ambulance. The prices just went up so substantially that normally the gurney, the equipment that's mounted in it, is part of the ambulance cost that's proposed. So everything that we propose will be mounted in the ambulance or used as part of it. Won't leave that rig.
So if we were to do like 200,000, that'd give you 80 grand.
Sure,
170.
170.
You said this is budgeted.
It's a budgeted item of
Budget item, so-
240,000.
But it's
But-
also an expenditure, and when you expend money, you have to put it in the motion.
Yeah, Councilor Member Arnold, what he's trying to do is just define the amount of the expenditure that's in the RFP. And so
But the RFP is only
For
up
the
to
ambulance.
a
119.
small portion of it.
Right,
And
so
this- if we
What you're
don't
doing
take-
is correct, just trying
If
to
we
set
don't
that
take
amount.
care of it now, that means you're gonna have to come back for all of your goodies,
Right.
and you don't need to do that. We give you a,
But
give us
I
a,
won't be here. Ask them.
give us a number. Give us a number that you're comfortable with, because it's gonna be well under budget.
It's going to be well under budget.
So
I
we
would,
just-
I'm comfortable with 2, and I'll try to even stay under that.
Okay, you okay with that? That's good to do that.
Yeah, when you start talking EKG monitors and compression devices, an EKG monitor right now is 28,000. The load's 23,000. We actually bought the load at discount. It's normally 27. I already pre-ordered it at 23. And then compression device is
presumptuous.
18,000.
I'll say. Jeez.
It's when you start
got it
getting
for
into
23, yeah, that's good. That's great.
one back surgery is $100 grand.
Yeah.
So I experienced
We
it.
say the motion,
I'm okay with that, up to, yeah, not to exceed $200,000.
second agrees.
Second, agree with that? Okay.
I should be able to easily do that.
Any discussion on the motion? Ms. Evans, would you poll the council on the awarding of the RFP as stated?
Aye.
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 It's unanimous in favor, thank you. Okay, move on to discretionary business for this meeting. Any discretionary tonight? Mr. Hanson?
Real briefly, I just want to take a minute to thank the citizens for their trust and allowing me to participate in this process. It's been fun and interesting, and I've enjoyed it. I want to thank the staff for all their work. I know not enough people outside of your immediate families know what goes into it, and that's unfortunate, but I appreciate it. You guys, I think everybody's well-intentioned and you're doing great work. Keep it up. So that's all I got, and thank you to the support of my family. They've also been great. Thank you.
Thank you, Cody.
I want to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? City council meeting's adjourned. We'll move on next to our RDA board meeting. Thank you for being here, chiefs, and Merry Christmas to you guys that are leaving and you folks. So.
See you later.
Oh, by the way, Santa Claus, Saturday, 9
Ooh,
Hopefully it doesn't snow.
We'll be on the porch.
ho, 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 ho. Okay, move on next. We welcome you to our RDA board meeting this evening, Tuesday, December 17th. For the record, all board members are present, as are members of the staff. We have a period of time here for public comment. We invite you to come forward if you like, if you have any ideas or concerns for the RDA board, and limit your time to 3 minutes. State your name if you would. The time is yours for public comment.
Debbie?
Now's your chance, Debbie.
I'm trying to think of something.
Move on next to our consent items. We have 2 consent items this evening. The first is consideration to approve the meeting minutes for November 19th, which is our last RDA meeting.
Didn't get the RDA.
Any changes or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, we move on to consent item number 2. This is consideration to set a public hearing for January 7th, 2020, to receive and consider public comments regarding the 2019-2020 budget amendment. Is there any discussion on this item before we vote, Mr. Worthen? I think it's pretty.
Yeah, other than we have some few minor adjustments to the RDA budget in consideration of some of the RDA activities relative to land development.
Those will all be presented when it's a
Correct.
public hearing, so. All right, do we have a motion on the consent items?
Motion to approve consent items.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous in favor. Move on to discretionary business for the RDA meeting. Do we have any discretionary this evening? Okay, with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting's adjourned.
You're getting
Wish
out of
you
here.
all a very Merry